In much of the world, the Land Rover Defender is known for being utilitarian, functional, basically a work truck. But here in the US, it's taken on a whole other appeal and really an awful lot of cool. Now, some of that is because the styling has been more or less unchanged for some 40 years, and longer if you consider the Land Rover series that came before it. Anything that sticks that staunchly to its looks for that long is bound to take on some kind of icon status, and it has definitely earned a place in the enthusiast community. Some of it is also because these were really hard to get. We got a North American spec Defender from 93 to 97, so just 4 years. And if you can't get your hands on one of those, you're importing it, which obviously comes at a premium. So these have kind of been considered unobtainium for quite a long time. That all changed for 2020 when Land Rover brought us this, the Defender 663. So what we have today in this very British weather for a very British vehicle, 2024 Land Rover Defender 110S. So the S is the base trim, which is pretty cool. We don't always review the lower trims. The 110 is for the 4-door, or I guess you call it a 5-door with that rear opening. This can be a 2-row or a 3-row. There's also the 90, which is the 2-door, 3-door with the back. And then there's the 130, which is the extended wheelbase version. But we're gonna look at this middle one today. This is definitely more sort of padded looking than the old Defender, which again, hadn't really changed since the 80s, so that was very much classic. This is a little bit inflated, as many things are these days, but it still has some nice legacy touches, like the textured hood panels here. That's very much a heritage detail. The rounded headlights, although now they're cut off, so they kind of look like eyes, which I think is really cool. Now, if you read about the new Defender, it's a little confusing because there's both a country pack and a county pack. The country pack gives you things like mud flaps and like black plastic cladding to protect the wheel arches, which reading that made me realize that we don't have a lot of black plastic cladding here, and that's sort of unusual these days, right? Especially for an off-roader. We see a lot of cladding. What we do have is the county pack, as you can see from this graphic here. That's an appearance pack. It's only $600 on the builder, but it does force $4,100 worth of changes, so I thought that was a little bit funny. For example, 19-inch wheels would be standard, but we have the $1,800 set of 20-inch white wheels. I think they look pretty cool. They got very mixed reviews from friends and family this weekend, so let us know what you think of the wheels. We also have off-road tires as part of the off-road pack. Then we of course have the graphic I already pointed out. That does seem to actually be part of the county pack for no additional cost. We also have the $1,000 blue roof, which I think is pretty darn good looking. You don't often see blue roofs. This color is called Fuji White. It's the only color that is not extra cost. And then I want to point out this body colored panel here that all the new Defenders have. It's a little bit funky looking. I think part of the reason though is that you can get an accessory that's actually a gearbox mounted to the side, and that goes right here. So this is providing a perfect landing point for it. At the back, we've also got the blue door matching the roof, which again, I think looks really good. I'm not wild about the taillights. They're a little bit small, kind of dinky in my opinion, but they have become very much the signature lighting of the Defender. You always know it when you see it after dark for this generation. So they've committed, they're doing a thing. I respect that. Now, because we upgraded the wheels on this one, we also have to pay to upgrade the full-size spare wheel and tire. This is listed at only $100 on the builder. So can I just get 4 spare wheels? Inside, we have a good mix of that sort of rugged off-roader feel, but also with a little bit of the Land Rover luxury. Maybe not quite as cushy as a Range Rover, but definitely also not as utilitarian feeling as, say, a Bronco or a Wrangler. These grained leather seats, this is the ebony interior color. These feel nice. They also don't feel like they're gonna be damaged easily. So it's kind of a fine line. They don't feel low quality, so I really like that. These are heated. We also have the heated steering wheel. Dual zone climate control is standard, but this one has tri-zone for $400, so that's a nice thing. I will say these climate control buttons took a little bit of getting used to. It took me a minute to figure out, and by a minute I mean a few separate drives, to figure out how do I change the fan speed versus the temperature, and where exactly are the seat temperature controls for my heated seats. A little bit of interesting. I think once you get used to it, it will be second nature pretty quickly, so I think it's okay. I really like all the storage that we have along the dash here. Lots of little different sections in these trays. For example, I'm keeping my Easy Pass over here. Maybe if I owned this, I would keep it mounted on the windshield, but since I don't, it's nice to have a dedicated spot. I also could hide something behind the screen here if I wanted to. I just criticized the QX80 for not having space behind the screen, so I definitely wanted to point out that this does. I think that's really nice. The tray is not quite wide enough for a phone to rest flat, which I thought was a little weird, but we do have a wireless charging pad right here where we could put it. I also like being able to put stuff on the dash because in some Defenders, this would be a cool box. So you're not going to want to put something like your cell phone in there because you don't want to accidentally turn it on and freeze your phone. So really nice to have lots of other places. We've even got some pass-through storage down here, USB-C, USB-A ports, another one up here. So lots of different options. Legroom and headroom, I would say is great here, but let's check out the back seat. Back here, space is good. As is probably obvious from the outside, we don't have a sloping roofline, so we're not sacrificing any headroom for the back seat. And even this panoramic moonroof really doesn't impinge on it at all. That's not just coming from me. Elliot also climbed in here, so it's not just a short person's opinion. He said also that headroom is good. I love that we have these Alpine windows up here. That's a legacy feature that kind of harkens back to the heritage of the Defender, and I think that looks really awesome and is just a really nice touch. We have dedicated climate control here in the back of the center console, plus USB ports for at least 2 passengers. If you've got a third person in the middle, then they don't get their own port. They're gonna have to share. Probably okay, because you're also gonna want cup holders, which are right here. There's a pocket for the water bottle in the door, but I don't think that's a great spot to put a coffee. I'm not sure this is a great spot to put a coffee either, because as you can see, this is pretty shallow, so it feels a little precarious. Like if I were reaching for something, I could knock it over and spill it. So maybe not great. Now, as I mentioned, the 110 can be a 2-row or a 3-row. From here, it doesn't look like a ton of space for another row. So I think if you regularly have more than 5 people in your vehicle, you're gonna wanna take a look at the 130, that extended wheelbase version. More space. Behind this row, because I only have 2, I've got 34 cubic feet of cargo space. Packing this up for the weekend, we had golf clubs, we had a cooler, we had kind of a lot of beer and wine to share with family, sleeping bags, lots of gear, and it was fine. It all fit underneath the cover, and which was good because I didn't want it to be hitting anybody in the back of the head. We did have to take everything out occasionally to get at something and then put everything back in. So there wasn't a ton of room to work, but there was enough space for everything. This one has the mild hybrid powertrain, aka the P400. So that is a turbocharged 3-liter 6-cylinder that makes 395 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque, and it feels torquey. It's got a 0 to 60 mile per hour time of 5.8 seconds and a top speed of 119 miles per hour, which I definitely think is artificially limited. The lower cost powertrain is the P300, so that does not have that mild hybrid support. That's a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, makes 296 horsepower, has a 0 to 60 mile per hour time of 7 seconds, but same top speed of 119 miles per hour, which is part of what makes me think it's limited. There's also an available V8, but that's treated as a whole other trim, and it's an entirely different ballpark pricing-wise, starting at $113,500. So more than $50,000 more expensive than this. Definitely makes it not super relevant to this particular review, but Cliff did do a full video on the 2023 Defender 90 with the V8, so if you're interested, we do have that material for you right here on this channel. So back to the vehicle at hand. The Defender has unibody construction. It's not body on frame, and as you might expect, that gives it much better driving dynamics, much better on-road manners. I was actually very pleasantly surprised with this. Particularly on the highway, it's a great driving experience, much better than a Jeep Wrangler and even better than a Ford Bronco, I would say. It's good handling, the steering is nice and responsive, but it doesn't sort of dart around and make you adjust it constantly. The ride is comfortable, it's not super noisy. All around, pretty darn pleasant and appropriate for what is ostensibly a luxury SUV. Also contributing to the comfort of this vehicle is the air suspension pack. That's an option that I have on this one. So that gives me an electronic air suspension and adaptive dynamics, and it really has made for a nice, comfortable ride. Even on a dirt road, I took it down over the weekend, had a lot of bumps and different sized rocks, but particularly from the driver's seat where I'm in control, quite comfortable, much more comfortable than you might expect. Speaking of highway driving, I do want to comment on the adaptive cruise control system, which is not my favorite. I would call it maybe a little bit more reactive than adaptive. You know, a person would be looking pretty far down the road and sort of seeing what's coming next, or at least you should be. That's how you should drive. This system tends to take you kind of right up to the back of the vehicle in front and then slow down abruptly, jam on the brakes a little bit, speed up as soon as it can. It's less fluid than I would like. Same is true of the lane keep assist, the lane centering. It will kind of take you right to the edge and then jerk the steering wheel aside a little bit. Not, again, as organic or as fluid as I would like it to be. The steering wheel is kind of cool. You know, you're supposed to hold it right here, obviously, at 9 and 3. But if you're relaxing, using adaptive cruise, whatever, just trying to keep your hands on the wheel, I like these little gaps in it that let you kind of put your fingers, lace your fingers through. It's very comfortable, it's very ergonomic for the hands. It's just kind of nice to be able to hold it right down here. I also think it's neat, weird, but neat, that the steering wheel button diagrams are purely backlit. When the car is off, you can't even see what any of these buttons are for, so it's just sort of interesting. I have found the throttle mapping to be a little bit weird, a little bit hard to modulate. It's a very torquey vehicle, and so sometimes the response is not quite what you're expecting from a stop. But that torquiness is great for off-roading, which of course is one of the main points of the Defender and of Land Rover vehicles in general. This has a lot of gear aimed at that. It also has, of course, all-wheel drive, 2-speed transfer case, so effectively 4 high and 4 low settings. Lots of other off-road gear. We've got the off-road pack here, but Matt spent a lot of time talking about off-roading in his review of the Defender 110, so I'm going to refer you to that because I'm on city streets today. This is a pretty small little infotainment screen right here, which is actually, that's not a criticism. I think a lot of people really object to portrait style screens and to screens that look like they've just been slapped on kind of willy-nilly, and this is neither. It's very obviously sized to fit between the bar and the shelf here. I think it looks really nicely integrated. Again, I like that there's space behind it. I think it's pretty obvious that the size is due to fitting it perfectly in the existing cabin and not setting the cabin up around the screen. So I really like that. It's 10 inches. Reminder that these things are measured in diagonal, so other 10-inch screens might look a little bit different from this. I like the infotainment platform a lot in that it's very tasteful looking. It's not monochrome or sort of boring or cheap looking, but it's also not garish. The colors are good, the layout is good, it's easy to find what I'm looking for. I have had a few issues with it functionality wise. One big problem where Apple CarPlay just wouldn't show up or connect or respond, which was a little bit weird, but eventually righted itself. And one issue on the way here today where the screen just would not turn on, even when I restarted the vehicle. So that was a little strange, but it's on right now, and I definitely don't want to suggest that that's something that could happen to any Defender. It may just be this vehicle. That's just been my experience with it. There are some really cool features in here. So obviously you've got your wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, Sirius XM, HD radio, all the kinds of things that we're expecting. There are also some neat things like this air quality screen. That was really fun on a dirt road in Maine to see, okay, outside there are a lot of particles. It's really bad. It's verging on hazardous. Inside, the car is actively working on purifying the air, and I can see it improving, which is pretty cool. I also really like this vehicle dimension screen. That's super handy if you're off-roading or even if you're trying to go through a drive-through or enter a parking garage. It's really cool to be able to access that so easily. And then another one that jumped out was the on-road versus off-road cameras. That's pretty cool pretty useful. There are a lot of dedicated off-roading features in here, so lots of super functional stuff in a really nice looking package. Base price for the Defender 110 with the P300 powertrain is right around $61,000. The P400 powertrain bumps that up to right around $68,000. This one though, in addition to that $1,475 destination fee, has a ton of other options that bring it up to $81,103. And so it's $3 that'll really get you, right? This has several options, as we discussed. The most expensive ones are the blue roof, the white 20-inch wheels, the air suspension pack, and the off-road pack. Together, those four things add more than $5,000 to the spec sheet. Everything after that is a sub $1,000 option. This hits kind of a sweet spot in terms of capability and luxury. There are certainly more luxurious, cushier SUVs, for example, from Audi or BMW or Mercedes. They're not going to be able to do everything that this can do. There are other capable off-roaders like the Wrangler or the Bronco. They don't drive as nicely as this does on-road. So really, this is checking a box or several boxes that not a lot of other vehicles do. Plus, it's got that icon status. The only other thing that I can think of is maybe you want to look at a Land Cruiser and just option it all the way up. That I think is equally iconic, but even the Lexus GX, not as cool as the Land Rover Defender, in my opinion. Let us know what you think, though. I'm really curious to hear. And I want to say a big thank you to the beautiful Lars Anderson Auto Museum for letting us use the property and the great lawn here today. Great car shows here almost every weekend in the summer. It's my happy place. It's home to America's oldest car collection, so check it out. Head over to CarGurus.com to do your shopping, but please subscribe to this channel before you go.